Tara Solutions is a HR consulting firm, and we offer HR consultancy services. We offer HR manager outsourced. We offer learning and development. We offer recruitment or talent search. So if you're looking to hire or have some positions filled, do get in touch with us, and we can take that headache off of you and ensure that you have the right employees in place. All right. So you are tuned in to Get It Right with the Tara Solutions. Get It Right with the Tara Solutions is a webinar series that seeks to demystify issues in employment and entrepreneurship. We are here every Tuesday from 8 o'clock. We have been doing this since 2020 June. We are 6 years later, still here, still going strong, and looking forward to more days to come, and hoping that these have been impactful sessions to you. And of course, I am joined by my co-host, Mr. Richard. You can introduce yourself.
Welcome, 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 ladies and gentlemen. My name is Richard J. Magoma, HR professional. I assist people in interview preparation and also to speak with eloquence so that you can smile all the way to the bank like my good friend, moderator of choice.
Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. And you guys, thank you for confirming. I see you had a good day. Some people are saying they had a busy day. Very much, very, very good. And I apologize that our sign language interpreter is on leave. She's on maternity leave. And so we are trying to see how to work things around. But nonetheless, especially for an important day like today when we're talking about inclusivity, that should have really featured, but we are hopeful. So tonight, we want to understand where you come in when it comes to the act that talks about persons with disability or people who are abled differently. And we have an expert in this area, somebody who has been a champion of persons living with disability. And he is here to unpack for us what are the adjustments that we need to make as HR professionals. And we are honored to have our partners in East Africa. We have my good friend Herbert Zake. Herbert Zake runs an organization called Steadfast Quality Solutions. And Steadfast Quality Solutions is a HR and public relations consulting firm located in Kampala, Uganda. If you're looking for HR services in Uganda, then Herbert Zake is the person you go for. And of course, we have our partners, K2 HR Services, where if you're looking to outsource staff outsourcing services and HR solutions in Rwanda, then K2 HR or K2 Career Center are our partners, and they should be able to support you in that. So tonight, to help us unpack the issues around the Act on PWD and the adjustments that we need to have, we have Mr. Alan Were Maonga, who is has over a decade in HR in terms of experience and diversity and inclusion and accessibility. He specializes in disability inclusive employment and is very passionate about helping organizations build inclusive, resilient, and high-performing workplaces. And he's a trainer and a human resource leader, and he has come up with proper strategies and practical ones to help you enable you to implement disability inclusive work practices. So with us, we're very honored to have you, and thank you very much for agreeing to be here. And please take it away, Mr. Alan. You're on mute.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you much for all the participants who have joined us this evening. I just want to make this conversation very lively. So if I'm too fast, please just flag me down. I should be able to stop. I am not sure in which journey we all are in the disability inclusive space, but I'll try and make it simple and easy for us to all of us to be able to understand. I'll be sharing my screen. My name is Alan, as Grace has correctly said it. I work with Next Step Foundation. HR professionals. I work with a number of corporate partners just to be able to walk through and then guide them in terms of the inclusive spaces. That is what we do on a day-to-day. So we are happy to be able to see more employers become inclusive and then more employers just to be able to walk the journey. My presentation today will be quite very short, just to be able to speak in terms of what is changing. The legal space in terms of inclusive employment is changing, but is our workplace really are changing. So we have quite a number of different legislations across the board that talks about inclusive employment, inclusive policies, inclusive practice. And this legislation cuts across the entire life cycle of an employee within the organization. It touches the number of policies that we have in different organizations. So we just want to quickly, very high level, look at what we all need to be able to know, whether you're a people manager, you're HR professionals, just to be able to manage a diverse team. And the first question that I wanted us to ask is, from where you sit, whichever organization you are working with, whichever entity you are running, what does your employee with disability look like? I've seen a number of my friends within the HR space talking about, we have an advert that has gone out. The advert has actually run for a month, whichever number of days it is, and you have a clearly stipulated down there below that women and possibility are encouraged to apply. But then we are not getting the participants' ability to be able to apply. Where are the candidates? So that is always the big question. Where are the candidates? So first, do we know how they look like? When we go out to be able to source and attract the participant with disability to join our organization, do you know how they look like? I have seen organizations which have big numbers in the tune of headcounts of 3,000, and they'll tell you we don't have anyone with disability. So do we know how they look? Do we know how they interact and how they be able to deliver their work at workplace? So that is a very pertinent question for us to be able to unlock today in this particular discussion, that then we know the how different staff interact with the workplace, interact with work, interact with colleagues. Can it be a situation that one is actually a person with disability within among ourselves that is actually not declared? So disability itself presents itself in many forms. Two critical one. One, we have what we call visible disability, as what you can be able to see, what you're able to see up here. So all these images here is what you'll be able to see a person who has got a disability. So either they'll be using one form or another in terms of an assistive aid. So you can be able to see like the first one, the second one is one who is an amputee. So they actually visible, you can be able to see whether one is actually approaching you, one is actually having activity in the workplace, you'll be able to see that this person has got a disability. But then we have a bigger pool of person with disability among ourselves. Study shows that 24% of person with disability in the workplace have got invisible disability. You cannot be able to tell unless that particular employee, your friend, tells you that I have this type of disability. So they are among ourselves, but then why are they not be able to come out and be able to talk about the type of disabilities? Previous, some years back, we used to talk about belonging in the workplace, bringing your whole in the workplace. And that is the element of this particular discussion today. How do we make a situation whereby all of us who have got both invisible and visible disability, we can be able to come up and be able to declare that this is what I have, and can the workplace really, can my manager, can the policies really be able to accommodate me, deliver in my work? So as we move on, disability can either be visible or invisible. An employee can either be born with a disability or acquire disability in the line of work. And in all of us in our workplaces, we have what we call the occupational and health safety and all those acts that just make sure that the workplace is safe. But then in the event that you acquire disability in the workplace, what does the policy in terms of disability talk about that? I know we have a practice that most of us HR do when we ask for medical fit note from doctors to be able to advise management on the administrative action that needs to be taken to an employee. But then the law is changing, and we're going to see how the law is changing and how the law is actually bringing some rail guards to be able to make sure that an employee who acquires disability in the line of work is protected. So the law actually be able to expand that and be able to make sure that those rail guards really protects that particular employee. But before we go that, let's look at the numbers, why this discussion is important. Across the board right now, we're talking about 15 to 16% of the global population are persons with disability. That is roughly slightly above 1 billion people across the globe are persons with disability. So from a HR perspective, this creates a very attractive point in terms of talent search, talent pool. We're talking about 1 billion people that we can be able to tap if our processes are inclusive, is our ERPs are inclusive, is all the things that we do are inclusive, then it basically means that we have a billion people that we can be able to attract. You can imagine if you a product or a service company that is inclusive, then it basically means that you open the doors to 1 billion people, and that is money on the table that you actually need to be able to pick. But then this 1 billion people plus are distributed in the different forms of disabilities. So we have actually those who have sensory disabilities or impairment. We have those who have mobility challenges in terms of walking. We have those who have intellectual disabilities. We have those who have visual disabilities. So they're actually in between there in terms of pieces. So different countries have got different severity depending on different conditions. But across the globe, it is a billion people, more than 1 billion people. These are WHO statistics. And if you cascade down that data down, you'll be able to find almost 16% of your country population should be hypothetically person with disability. But then when we come down to very granular to country level, we look at your recent statistics that were done by your respective countries. Which number does it put us at? So if you look at that, then you get the actual representation that you have per each country. So all these different types of disabilities that people have actually are within our workspaces, and we're going to look at that, how they project themselves. But then no one staff can wake up today in the morning and be able to say, I am going through, or this is my type of disability. They have to go through a scientific process, which is a medical process. So it's a medical process through a medical facility that this person will be able to be declared a person with disability and be able to be told which type of disabilities. So different countries have got different metrics that they test any individual who walks into their facility will be able to be tested for disability, and you'll be given which category you are in and be registered to be a person with disability. So staff should not wake up in the morning and say, I have a disability. They have to be able to prove that they have a disability through a medical assessment that the doctor will be able to give and be able to be given a certificate as a person with disability. So for purpose of this discussion and purpose for HR perspective, if you look at the column where we talk about the visible disability, so we have multiple disabilities, and you'd see someone who one may be using an assistive device. Either you have a pair of crutch, or you have one crutch, or you're using a wheelchair. But then in addition to that, in terms of mobility disability, then you have another layer of disability that you have. So you'll have an employee who has multiple types of disabilities within the same workplace. And that particular employee would interact with the work differently and would deliver the same work differently than someone who does not have a disability. Same applies to physical disability. This is someone who has got either cerebral palsy or one of the upper limbs or lower limbs have been amputated, which you can be able to visibly see. And that basically means the reasonable adjustment in terms of which type of seat, which type of desk. Do you have adjustable desk in the workplaces? All those come into place. Do you want to have them sit on third floor? Do you have elevators that will go to third floor? So all that also plays a significant point in terms of where do you position your staff across the organization. We have those who have sensory disorders, and these are quite many. You can think of your 5 senses, 6 senses, 8 senses, depending on the school that you went in. blindness, hearing loss, sensory disorder. You can be able to have a staff who sits on the aisle, and you have so if this staff has got a disability, which is a sensory impaired disability, and you position them to be able to sit on your office aisle. So whenever Jane, Isaac, whichever your employee is that likes to be able to wear very strong cologne passes by, and I have a sensory disability. So once I pass through that particular employee, the strong cologne that I'm putting on actually affects that particular employee, and you find the employee loses concentration. Or if you're working in a very busy airline, or your offices are just adjacent a busy highway, and you have this super bike that just passes by, and the employee sitting right closer to the window. So that particular noise that will pass with that super bike really triggers that particular employee, and the employee actually loses concentration and loses the thought process within the work. So all these things, once the employee is able to disclose, then you're able to know as a HR person, where do you position the employee in terms of sitting position. We have those who have got developmental disabilities. This we talk about autism, Down syndrome, also are part of us, and we really need to be able to know where do we position them. Have you seen someone who walks into the office first thing in the morning? So you walk in and you meet me at the elevator, and you start asking me, but then I've just received yesterday report. Where are you with this? But then if I am someone who is have autism, then I have actually come from a very stressed environment through my transition from home to office. So I've just walked in. I need about 10 minutes, 15 minutes just to be able to collect myself, decompress. But then if you start asking me about, I didn't receive this report, when can we be able to have a meeting today? Before I decompress, then you actually throw me off balance. So you actually need to be able to give me some time just to come in, relax, put my bag down, get a glass of water, if it's coffee, and just to be able to come, have myself into the work situation, and then be able to have now all follow-up questions that will be able to come. We have learning disorder. This we talk about reading difficulties, math difficulties, writing difficulties, and all these things just speak directly to how we organize our meetings. Do we send minutes of meetings after the meetings? When we send calendar invites, do we put in, or do we have a laundry list of agendas to be discussed? Who will be speaking in that meeting? So all these learning disabilities are actually been able to be easily addressed by having some reasonable adjustment that we speak as we move on. In terms of communication disabilities, we have those who have got challenges in terms of speaking, those who will take time to be able to voice. So good etiquette is if there's a hard word, for example, I'm trying to say disability. So do not be in a rush to be able to come and help me finish the word. So don't help me finish the word. Just give me time, be a bit of patient, allow me to be able to finish what I'm saying. I've seen situations whereby we are all in a rush to be able to call candidates for an interview, but then you call, the candidate on the other side receives the phone, but the candidate has got challenges in terms of saying hello. So it'll take time to be able to say hello. By the time you or this other side, you already said hello, hello, and on the call, and be able to hang the call. So by you be able to know which type of disability an employee has, a candidate has, will be able to help you effectively communicate with that particular candidate. And finally, we have what we call behavioral or emotional disabilities. And this is whereby most of us within HR will say, Alan in HR is a difficult person. Alan in HR keeps on procrastinating. Alan in HR does not keep time. But then Alan in HR is always very fearful. He would want to double check. I've already sent an email, but I want to check, did the email go? Is there any typo of this particular email? Is it a type of behavioral and emotional disability that particular employee is going in? But then for you to be able to answer that question, this particular employee has to go through a medical assessment that is done in medical facilities and be able to determine if they have a disability and which level they are in. So we have different forms of disabilities. Different countries have got different classifications of disabilities. From a Kenya perspective, we have about 11 classifications of disabilities, which have been classified by the Ministry of Health. If you go towards India, they have about 21 thereabout. So it keeps on varying from region to region, from country to country, because these are medical classifications that are determined by different countries that we are in. So depending on where you are, encourage your employees, those who don't know their disability status, if they wish to be able to know, allow them to be able to go for check in the medical facilities that are around your offices. For those who have not declared, encourage them to be able to declare so that you can be able to effectively manage a diverse team within your workplaces. So with that said, there is an assumption whenever you see someone with disability, you see the person first, you see the disability first before the person. And this heavily speaks about the way we treat, the way we recruit, the way we promote, the way we remunerate, the way we conduct performance appraisal to persons with disability. And all this belief in terms of seeing this person's possibility, then it basically can be classified into many models of disabilities. And I've just picked 3 for the basic of this particular conversation. And then these 3 will actually bring in why we see the disability first before we see the person. Every year in HR and organizations that we are in, we have what we call the ESG, social, corporate, and governance, and all those reporting that we do. We also have what we call the responsibilities, that corporate social responsibilities that we do. And it always comes towards the end of the year. You see, we put very fancy boxes along the aisle, and we ask our staff, if you have nice shoes, grocery at home that you don't use, can you be able to drop them at that particular drop box? All those things. So it's a charity model. So what we believe is that the person's ability cannot be able to work. They need to be helped. From different contexts, different countries, we have what we call special schools. So they cannot be able to go to the ordinary school, so they have to be taken to a special school somewhere to be able to have special learning. So that is a charity model. So when you're doing recruitment from an HR perspective, then we'll say, do we have easy roles, less risky roles? So we look at a call center role, we look at an admin role, to extension, we look at an HR role. That these are easy roles to be cordoned for person with disability. That's a charity model. If you are a good reveler and there's a Friday and you walk into your joint and you find someone with albinism, you find someone in a wheelchair in that particular spot, so you wonder, why is this person at this particular hour outside? So that's a charity model. But then you have the medical model, which also is very rampant within the organization. So if one gets or acquires disability in the line of work, we are quick to say, let him go through a medical process. He'll go through a medical process, have himself checked or self-checked, and then we'll give time, we'll write to the doctor and be able to ask, can you give us a medical fit note? This person was a driver, and this is the role that the person was doing. This person was our a technical manager, and this is the role that he was doing. Is he able to, or she able to come back and perform the role? So once we receive the medical fit note, then we'll advise management and tell management, hey, we have received this medical fit note, but then John, Isaac, Mary will not be able to perform the role. So then we have a legal backing to be able to relieve Mary John from his or her duty. So that is used to be able to happen. But the law has slightly changed. From a Kenya perspective, you cannot be able to do that. So the law has introduced that you have to have that particular employee for the rest of the lifetime of the employee until 2 things happen. Either you get a suitable role that you can be able to place that particular employee. That is one scenario. Alternatively, if your establishment cannot be able to support an additional role, So you create a super role for this particular employee, and the employee will be able to occupy that role until when he or she will be able to involuntarily leave the organization through resignation or through retirement. But then there are other legal ways that you can be able to see how do we be able to have a win-win between the employee and the employer in such a situation, and that comes in looking at what we mean by reasonable adjustment. The other key area to look at in terms of legislation, so the legislation across the board has actually moved. So right now we're talking about what we call a social model or a right-based approach, whereby all the legislations that are happening now across the board, whether in Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, Ethiopia, or India, are actually what we call a right-based approach. So all these roles are protecting the rights of the employee with disability. So you'll see more of employees saying, would we receive penalties? Will we be taken or have been dragged to court because of a misstep in terms of inclusion? And that's what we want to address. So right now the laws have changed across the board. Is now a right-based approach that we are looking at in terms of creating universal designs. So I don't need to be able to come to your workspace and be able to ask for a concave keyboard. I don't need to come to your workplace and be able to have a ramp, because you actually, across the board, across the globe, we're talking about universal design. So if you are putting up a new office premise, then are you able to be able to have that office structure come in already inclusive? So built in with already inclusive accessibility features. When you are actually purchasing your work tools, including laptops, they actually come with already inbuilt accessibility application in it. So it's actually a universal design. So it's just going to be a plug and play. But then there are those that, of course, would need a bit of requirement to be in. So different countries have got different legislation that will support what we call this right-based approach. And this legislation actually part of what is a UN convention. So across the board, we have about 103 countries across the board, or 93 countries thereabout. But out of all this, almost all of them have signed this UN convention. It's called Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, that clearly brings in one unified definition on who is a person with disability. Back in the days, because we didn't have a unified definition, so each countries had got their own ways of defining who is a person with disability, have got their own ways of defining what reasonable adjustment is, have got their own ways of defining what the rights of a person with disability are in. So all the countries have actually signed this particular convention that clearly defines who a person with disability is. And it defines as a person who has got either permanent disability or temporal disability. So permanent disability is you have disability for life, but temporal disabilities is you have slightly been involved in an accident and you are undergoing treatment. And this treatment will either lead to full recovery or will have you declared to be able to have a permanent disability. So that definition clearly encompasses that and also defines that clearly. It also defines quite a number of other areas that you're looking to do in terms of reasonable adjustment. It also broadens the definition of what we call discrimination from a point of employment. And when you are reading the Convention Rights of Possibility, you have to read it in conjunction with your local legislation in terms of employment legislations that you have, and be able to make sure that then they are in line in both of them. Those countries which have got the Possibility Act, including Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Rwanda, this particular act heavily borrows from the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disability. So it's just a matter of taking this convention and cascading it granular to the country level. And then we have quite robust legislations that guide IT products and services. And where I've put this one here is clearly to be able to look at HR ERPs that we have in our workplaces. And right now I'm seeing a lot of adoption of AI, which is also quite very nice. but then are they meeting accessibility standards? So just to be able now to discuss this heavily we have definitions that have been proposed and which are now coming down as a practice level within the HR day-to-day practice. And these definitions are here. I've just picked a few which we have to be able to carry with. So the legislation here, this Convention of Right of Person with Disability, is now bringing in or broaden the definition of discrimination. Ideally, discrimination in the workplace, we used to talk about gender, religion, color, tribe, depending on where you're coming from. We used to talk about disability, of course, itself, their religious religious beliefs, or whichever side of the coin you are in, and all that. But then, in terms of disability, what is coming in is the addition, any exclusion or restriction, but this was there. So it is including denial of reasonable accommodation. So if you look at the Employment Act, whichever country you are in, then add the phrase including denial of reasonable accommodation has also been included as part of discrimination. And I want to give an example. You have called in for applicants to be able to apply for a job, and the job is sitting on your website under the career page. Is that website accessible? Is the person with disability, in terms of the person with visual impairment, can he or she be able to access that particular advert? If you're having what we call your first level of interview is the aptitude test, and you have put this quite nice arithmetic that says if A and B and C, and you have given us 10 seconds to be able to work on that particular arithmetic and be able to solve it. So if I am having challenges with my upper limb, so one of my upper limbs is shorter, and you need me to be able to do keyboarding shortcut very fast, then what is the reasonable adjustment for me? Because my speed will not be equal to the person whose upper limbs are of equal length. So that is what we call reasonable adjustment. In terms of reasonable adjustment or reasonable accommodation, has also been clearly defined into that particular act, legislation across the board, depending on which country you're coming in. It says it is a necessary adjustment, and this adjustment must not cause or impose undue burden. A good example is you are a banking facility and your premises are on third floor. And this is a leased premise. So there are no elevators up there. And you're actually sourcing for a candidate. You get a good candidate who is on wheelchair. You don't have elevators, you're on third floor. Then what is the reasonable adjustment that you can be able to give this particular employee? Can the employee work from home? Is it possible? Depending on the nature of the job. If it causes undue burden for you to be able to accommodate me, undue burden, of course, you have actually to prove that it's causing undue burden, then you can actually communicate to the employee why we will not be able to proceed with his candidature, because the reasonable accommodation will be able to cause undue burden. But in the event that you cannot be able to substantiate that accommodating this particular candidate, accommodating this particular customer would cause undue burden, then you have to offer reasonable adjustment, or we term it as discrimination. Again, the law is calling for universal designs, and universal design basically is a plug and play. If you're setting out your job adverts and saying, can you apply for this job? Do you really include a telephone number or email address and say, if you need reasonable adjustment, you can be able to write to us through this number, or call us in advance and tell us you need reasonable adjustment? That is what you're calling universal designs, just to make sure that it's a plug and play. If you're doing your procurement and you're actually building in and remodeling your restrooms, then can you be able to have them to be universally designed? That is very easy for anybody to come and be able to plug. And then the law is also changing in terms of looking at what are the support services. And support services are critical to be able to make sure that you are removing barriers in the touch point of this particular employee in your organization. And these support services includes, do we have sign language interpreters within our premises? And it's very easy. You can look at those bubbly employees who we always like to be able to have them go into our employee engagement groups. Can they be able to have a stretch role and be able to learn language interpreters? So that whenever you are having an employee that needs to be able to service of an interpreter, then you have one. The law is also changing. We have those employees who would want to use guide dogs or service dogs. Then how is our workplaces? Are we the employer of choice that we have cordoned an area and we have a guide that can be able to take care of the service dogs in our absence? So let's look at all these things depending on where you are and be able to see how well do we have all these services also embedded in our policies in terms of, if you want to be able to come with your guide dog into the workplace, then what are the policies around that guide dog? Where will it be stationed? Who will feed it? How is the hygiene within? So all those things have to be able to be embedded within your employee policies. Readers in the workplaces, institutional support necessary. In our workplace, because we're actually very inclusive, some of the support services we do is whenever we have an employee, a good employee that we have actually sourced outside, and the employee would need the services of a caregiver, then we actually bring in the employee and the caregiver. So we actually have got a situation whereby one role we get two staff. So then as a HR practitioner here, you don't want to have a situation whereby you have Alan who has come in, and Alan has come in with a support person that I need to have my support person round the clock. So in terms of your policies, then you also need to look at, in terms of that support service, how do you contract this particular person? And what are the gives and takes? Because then you don't have to have a situation whereby you have another person in the organization who comes in at 8 and just sits around, not really engaged. But then what are the other minimum qualifications that you can be able to ask that employee? When you come into the workplace, we agree you to come with a support person, but these are the minimum requirements we also want you to be able to meet as a support person to support our employee deliver on the job. And then what is the contracting space? Because then you'd want to have both employees under the same lens in terms of disciplinary, in terms of performance, so that then you have a uniform culture within the organization. So these are key definitions, but I thought I should be able to bring them up to us for us to be able to know. But there are quite many. Feel free to be able to get that convection. It's called Convection on the Rights of Persons with Disability, just to be able to look at it and see the laundry list of that particular definition. And also read closely the Possibility Act for that particular perspective. From a Kenyan perspective, there's another definition of public places that is also in the PWD Act of 2025 that clearly states any entity, any organization, any space that is open to the general public is a public space, and they need to be able to adhere to standards that are set to be able to make sure that it is universally accessible. So slightly going down into the employment spaces. So if you look at the different acts that we have in different countries, so far within the East African region, we have these 4 who have enacted their disability acts, and it comes with different quotas. Instance, for Kenya perspective, it is now mandatory for all public entities to be able to hire 5% of their headcount need to be persons with or employees with disabilities. But then for the private sector, as long as your employee base is 20, then you need to make sure that your staff count now is 5%. So 20 plus employees within the private sector in a Kenyan perspective, you need to make sure that now your 5% target kicks in. And you have to do a mandatory annual reporting at the end of the year. So what is happening right now to operationalize that particular act, The council is working around the clock to be able to give us a template in terms of how we are going to be able to do that reporting every year. From a Rwanda perspective, regardless whether you are in public or private sector, you need to be able to meet your 5% quota in terms of your headcount. And this, we say, it is one of the strongest quota system within the entire Africa, because it says 5% in regardless whether it is 2 employee, 3 employee. In Uganda perspective, the act is slightly flexible and gives leeway to the minister to be able to give the percentages on year to year. So that is quite of a moving target. So this year will be 2%, 2% for private, for 2% for public sector, 5%. So it's actually a moving target that is set by the minister. For Uganda perspective, all registered employers in the country are actually supposed to be able to have a 2% of their staff is persons with disabilities. So that is the law that is there. Is the law that all of us need to be able to see how do we actualize this particular 5%, 2%, and the respective quota that we have. Different countries within the East Africa, which are not listed under here, have got some rights that are inbuilt into their employment laws to be able to safeguard the person's stability into that particular country. But the win-win situation that comes in, because it's a tall order, you can be able to see 5%, 2%, and a slightly ministerial orders in terms of that comes in. But then how do you actualize these numbers? So what the respective countries across the East African regions are doing are giving incentives to both the employees who come and say, I am employed and have a disability, to be able to encourage disclosure, to be able to encourage all persons with disability who are eligible to work and have got the minimum competency to be able to join an organization and fill a role, to be able to come up and be able to be part of the process. There's also incentives that go to the employer. But then there is slightly a catch here. So all the countries in the East African space are doing very well on the employer side of it. So very strong. So everybody is giving incentive to the employers to be able to walk the journey. And this incentive is quite a big array depending on the country that you're coming in. So we have tax exemption that are related to the persons that you are hiring. We have those who give in terms of, if you modify your office, 50% of that cost comes back to you in terms of tax rebate. If you buy assistive devices, assistive furniture in your workplaces, you'll be able to get that. But then there is an element of proof. The council in your respective, national councils in your respective countries have to be able to ascertain that that person you have employed is a person with disability. So registration of the person of your employee with disability is critical in this particular journey. On the employee side, here is where we have the reliefs. So apart from Kenya, all other countries do not extend the relief to the employee with disability. So from a Kenyan perspective, as long as you have what we call visible disability, we can be able to see that you're using a white cane. We can be able to see your mobility, you have mobility challenges. Either you are how you walk, your upper limbs or lower limbs are not of equal length. You're using a white cane, you're using a crutch, a pair or a single crutch, then you get a tax relief up to 150,000 Kenya shillings. But if you have invisible disability, disability that you cannot be able to see, then you don't get a tax exemption from a Kenyan perspective. Right now, the law is actually moving towards extending the tax relief to guardians and parents with personal disability. But what is happening to all employees and all employees with disability in the East African space, all of them are being protected against discrimination and the failure to give reasonable adjustment. So what is happening? It is a must for all employers within the East African region to be able to avoid discrimination in all the touch points that the employees and countries of disability will come with, and also is mandatory for us to be able to offer reasonable adjustment to all our employees. But then you would wonder, with all these incentives, then where are persons with disability? So we have a laundry list of barriers that hinder our persons candidates ability to be able to join the workplace. One is the lack of awareness and confidence. So you'd want to start, but it's the fear of the unknown. How will I do it? I really don't know how to be able to accommodate possibility. So that disability confidence is lacking. And then thank you for the solution for creating this particular session for us to be able just to slightly have the conversation. So there's that element. I'm fearing, I don't know where to start. That is there is a big barrier. Unconscious bias, whereby we talk about, and these are misconception. Persons with disability are poor performance. They will utilize all our medical cover. They'll be on sick leave. Absenteeism will be high. It's unconscious bias that is there. It is expensive to be able to accommodate a person's disability. Inaccessible recruitment platform, and I've talked about the WhatsApp. We like sending right now adverts on WhatsApp on PDF. Is it readable? If I'm using a readable application, can I be able to read that advert? We talk about physical accessibility barriers. You hire me, I am on a wheelchair, I cannot be able to access the CEO's office, that is the corner office. I cannot be able to come to the HR office because there are no ramps for me to be able to reach there. If I'm visually impaired and I walk into the elevator is not speaking back to me. I cannot hear doors opening. Third floor, doors closing. That is an inaccessible features. Skills gap. Who is training possibility to be able to join this specific field you are in security, you are in the oil, petroleum industry? Of course, weak policies. That does not go without mentioning weak implementation legislation. We have poor data. At the end of every month, as HR people, as people managers, we like consuming data in terms of what is our head count. We have ladies, we have gentlemen, but then do we look at how many people with disabilities do we have internally who have come and declare? We have limited disability commitment and limited accessibility, limited assistive technology. So all this is a laundry list, is a cocktail of just a snapshot of what is preventing our possibility from being able to come and declare. But then we have what we call the strongest drivers of change or drivers of inclusive. And this I've just picked about 6 that will be able to make us to be able to start the journey. How do you start the journey? One, there need to be leadership and accountability. This is basically, you have that person in your C-suite who is vouching for inclusive, because you will need to be able to look at all your 10, 20, 30 policies in your workplaces and be able to make sure that they are inclusive. How do you hire? They need to be inclusive. How do you do your comp and benefit discussion? How do you do your performance and management discussion? So all those touch points need to be able to have an inclusive lens in it. I have seen organizations which have got one single inclusive policy, well and good, that is fine. But then what happens to the other policies? All the other policies, for us to be able to make sure that we are touching on what we call inclusive culture and awareness, apart from training, that it has to be anchored in the different laws that we have. So leadership in terms of accountability has to be there. Who will be able to vouch, set aside for, approve the policies, set aside for resources if need be. Inclusive policies I've talked about without not saying. This is the foundation of inclusive employment in our organization. So let's look at all those touch points. What necessary adjustment do we put? Do we allow for 1 month, 2 days, 3 days work trial as part of an interview process to be able to make sure that Alan has got challenges with speech, but then can we give him, depending on the complexity of the job, can we have him have this job as a job trial to be able to see how he or she would be able to work on that particular job? Universal designs, started talking about it. Can we be able to build universal designs? And they are there. All our laptops are coming in with these particular features. But then what about the hardwares? What about the physical infrastructure? Let's look at that. Workplace adjustment, it goes without saying. Flexible work arrangement. Can we be able to allow our employees the ability to be able to work from whichever point they are in? If we cannot be able to procure a job software, can we be able to have what we call bring your own device, BYOD policy in the workplace to make sure that then we are accommodating everybody? Inclusive training, and of course, disability inclusion is a journey. We have to measure, we have to keep on tracking, and for us to improve, they need to be able to collect data and monitor progress. Where did we are? We started with 0 employee disability. Right now, we have actually remodeled our workplaces, our policies are inclusive, we have done staff training, we already have 1 staff in our organization who is a person with disability. So you have to track that on a day-to-day basis as we move forward. Quick one, as I'm almost going to end that we pick questions. If you want to be able to start the journey, where do you start? One, you have to have what we call leadership commitment. Leadership must be committed to be able to say, let's start the journey. Let's look at the architecture of our organization in terms of policies, in terms of workplace arrangement, in terms of all the culture that we have, and be able to start remodeling, start looking at the architecture, looking at your policies. You have to have leadership commitment to be able to walk this journey. You have actually to be able to, again, look at the state of your organization in terms of an assessment. Is it suitable right now to be able to onboard someone with physical disability or invisible disability, and then be able to bring everybody in? Are our staff being able to train on the disability etiquette, the do's, the don'ts, and all that? Are our people managers ready to be able to support an inclusive team? So once you be able to have that, then you're able to map on your short-term, mid-term, and long-term goal. Of course, that will not be success if you don't look at your HR policies. How do you hire? How do you retain? How do you transfer? How all those things have to be looked at with the lens of reasonable accommodation. How do you do your internal trainings? Is your internal learning management system inclusive? You have to start from there also and give all the employees within your organization an easy and a good experience. Of course, reasonable adjustment is quite key. How do I ask for reasonable adjustment without staff starting to be able to create discussions about Alan at water point? So that then today I am having a concave keyboard, then people will say Alan is a friend to HR. Alan is a friend to the procurement person. So how do we create and be able to have a process that Isaac, Peter, can be able to easily ask for reasonable adjustment without being victimized? And of course, people manager, hiring teams, HR should be able to be trained how to hire a person with disability. And it's very easy. A person with disability have worked with a support system. So you would find you have 10 candidates who have got disability, who apply for job, you speak to them and they put in the application. But on the day of coming for interview, you realize only 1 or 2 showed up. Is because the candidate resonated with the role, but the support system, these are the guardians, these are the friends, really have not bought into the idea that you are actually an employer of choice. So they would want to safeguard their friend, they would want to safeguard their dependent, they would want to safeguard their brothers and sisters, and they will tell the person that is not a good employer. And you'd find this candidate would not be able to show up for an interview. So when you actually looking out to be able to have a possibility, you have to make sure that then the role should be able to resonate to the candidate and to the support system to be able to have a good buy-in. That is why you see most candidates will say, we have not seen somebody apply, is because then it is either the support system or the candidate who have not resonated with that particular organization. In terms of building partnership, you have to build partnership with organizations of possibility to be able to help you remodel, redesign, and look at everything with the lens of this particular employee and making sure that there is integration whenever the employee comes into point. And of course, finally, is to be able to create a focal point person, the person that will be able to make sure if you are doing procurement, then have we factored in the element of inclusivity? If you're going for a team lunch, then have we looked and asked for the possibility, which are these accessible joints that you always frequent, that you can always be able to go? If you're going for a team building, then is the focal person will be able to make sure that then the inclusive touch points have been catered for, and all your employees are part of that particular journey. But we have among ourselves staff and organizations who have already started the journey. This journey is very nice. So what you need to be able to do, just make sure that you consistently keep on measuring your inclusion target. You're talking about 5% as the bare minimum. So as a target, have you set your target to be 30%? In terms of inclusion, have you set a target as an organization and say that we want to adopt sign language interpretation as our third communication in the organization? So what is this target that you're targeting? Let's start targeting that to make sure that we are actually moving. Of course, continuous assessment just to make sure that we are looking at all the ERPs we have, all the processes we have internally. Who did we consider when we are building and who has been left out to make sure that no one is left behind? Introducing inclusive leadership program. This would be a long-lived champions that will make sure the program outlive the organization. And there's actually business sense to be able to be inclusive. We're talking about 1 billion people, not only from an employee perspective, but also from a business perspective. So it's quite big. And you have seen quite a number of organizations out here which are actually making it big in terms of inclusive spaces, because you actually see how you'll be able to get 2, 3 in terms of numbers, in terms of clients. And of course, it's now quite very big in terms of ESG reporting. In terms of disability, where are we at? How inclusive are we? From a supplier perspective, from an employee perspective, all that is now becoming very big in terms of ESG reporting. And of course, what will make sure that we leave the process and we calculate this inclusive hiring into an inclusive lifestyle in organization is the employee resource groups. These are groups that will just be checking in terms of what is going right, what needs to be changed, what needs to be done in the organization to make sure that then, from a HR perspective, you have a go-to group that you can easily work, co-create, and front best practice for all of us in our organization. And finally, let's continue to measure and continue to improve. So those are simple steps for anybody who's starting the journey and anybody who is moving. We have many legal cases that have already been determined with many legal employment courts across the globe. Feel free as a HR practitioner just to be able to go and read and be able to see what happened. In your policies, in terms of a Kenya perspective and Tanzania perspective, what you talk about is the minimum retirement age. So for continuity, and you talk about continuity improvement, you have your retirement age at 60 years or 40 years. So most of these laws say 5 years above the mandatory retirement age. But then we have an employee who did not disclose that they have a disability. But what has happened? You have already gone ahead as a good HR and already started your succession planning. So you've already actually offered out a rollout in terms of someone to be able to come and fill that role. But then the employee tells you, hey, I'm here to stay for another 5 years. What is your internal policy saying about that situation? When can you be able to disclose and we uphold that? And when can you disclose and we actually quash that out and say you actually transition out of the business? So you have actually to look at your internal policies and make sure they resonate with all your employees in that particular organization. Finally, Disability inclusion is a journey. So you cannot be able to wake up today and be able to say you want to be at your 5% tomorrow. No, for the basic reason, all types of disabilities, even if it's separate disabilities, we don't have one fit all solution or reasonable adjustment for all. They are all unique. So that's why it's a journey that you have to walk step by step, speak to the person with ability in your organization and ask them, how will they want to be accommodated? In this particular space that we are in, we say we put the person first, the disability comes in, follows. So when you're saying a person with ability, you don't say able differently. You don't say the disabled. You don't say person living with. You say person with disability. For example, I live with my spouse here. So Alan lives with my spouse. So if tomorrow I see things are thick, we can say we are parting ways. So Alan will no longer be living with the spouse. It's the same way. If you say person living with disability, it basically means tomorrow he or she will wake up and say, I no longer don't want to live with this disability and drop the disability. But we say disability is permanent or temporal. So we say person with disability, Alan with disability, John with disability, or HR with disability. So you put the person first and then the disability follows next. I would want to stop there to be able to pick questions that are coming, just to make sure that we answer as many questions as possible. Apologies, these have been quite very fast, but happy to be able to go back and clarify areas that you would need clarification.
Thank you very much, Alan. I'm here thinking we need a bit of these sessions as well to just create awareness and to make sure that we are also complying, because I think this is something that we really need to preach some more. So it's now, my God, we are, okay, if you can indulge us for about 5 minutes, we shall try and combine your questions. And Alan, we ask that you make them short so that in the next couple of minutes we are done. And be able to also close on time. So if you can indulge us for a couple of few minutes. There's somebody who is saying, I'm not sure if I missed this. Where do you place a person of short stature? And what is a service dog and what for? Those are quick fire questions.
Yeah, thank you. Person with short stature, of course, if you are four and below, you are a person with disability. A service dog is a service dog. You can call it a service dog. You can call it a guide dog. There are a number of guys who, in different developed countries, they use them. So it's a dog that guides and protects someone who has got mostly low vision.
Okay. There's somebody saying, Leah, when is the best time to discuss disability? During interview or after hiring, especially for those who have learning disabilities and invisible ones? And number two, will HR allow and employees to use accessible apps that they have been using before to use in the office without stigma? Do you want me to read all the questions? There are 4 in 1.
Yeah, it's fine. You can just read the line. I can answer all of them at once.
Okay, then some PWDs need time out, especially those who need caregivers a lot. They are great at their profession, yet they need time out occasionally. How will this work? And then she makes a comment here. Always ask the PWD employee whom their support group in OPD is for support and inclusivity. So you can go ahead.
Thank you for those questions. So, Leah, the element of disclosure and looking at currently across the globe where we're talking about data protection. So, the element of disclosure is something that we encourage the employees to be able to disclose at whichever point. So, disclose can be done whenever the employee, the candidate feels comfortable. So it's our duty as HR personnel to make sure that as much as possible, we ask our candidates to be able to disclose at the earliest point. I will only disclose when I feel comfortable. So you have to make your candidates comfortable on the onset to make sure that it's a safe space. They can be able to disclose and they'll still be able to go through the interview process with available, reasonable adjustment. In terms of accessibility of applications, it depends with the industry that you are in. For example, if you're not in a position to be able to buy just softwares, there are quite a number of applications which are free, but then depending on your security architect within your organization, that is why it's very important to have what we call bring your own device policy in your organization, so that then when you allow me to be able to come with my device, then I am installing this device or patching it in my employee ERP, but then it's within the law, is within the security measures within your workplaces. So it's a matter of, do you have a policy of bring your own devices? Then that application should be able to follow that so that you safeguard on your data that you have. In terms of caregiver, for those who have caregiver and can be able to see, so there are a number of challenges with a caregiver. And the caregiver, first of all, is who is a caregiver. So that has to be clearly be defined, because that also brings in how do you contract the caregiver to be able to make sure that they are within the laws governing your workplaces in terms of time in, time out, performance, remuneration, and all that. So for you to be able to bring a caregiver, two options. You may allow, ideal situation is ask the candidate to be able to come with their preferred caregiver, but as an employer, you may guide on the minimum requirements of the caregiver. They need to be able to have this level of education so that they can be able to support your employee to be able to deliver. In terms of the support, the best person to ask for support is your employee. Good question, because we have employee who are called Caro. Caro can like to be called Caro, Carolina. So you ask the employee, how do you want to be called? How do you want to be supported? So the employee would be able to give you all that.
All right. And can a reasonable, why are the invisible disabilities not given relief, especially if they are registered as PWD? And can a reasonable accommodation which has been implemented be withdrawn by the employer?
So invisible disabilities currently are not part of the what has been listed in our tax law. We had hoped that it will be part of the finance bill that was written, was actually released last month, but that did not happen. So it's a bigger conversation that is still going on through the legislative process. We hope that that would be actually be brought into the be added into those other categories. Reason why it has been left out, because it is very difficult to be able to ascertain the threshold of that, but then it's currently being worked on to make sure that it does not create discrimination in terms of that benefit. So it's a bigger conversation that is going on. We hope to be able to see it come to be part of the benefits that persons with invisible disability, will be able to get. In terms of reasonable accommodation, we are saying the definition of discrimination has been expounded. And if you fail to be able to give reasonable accommodation, it is discrimination. So in the event that you give me reasonable accommodation and you pull it back, then that is discrimination. So then it actually now opens an entire, it changes the context. So if the employee actually, it can actually lead to constructive separation. It actually exposes now you. If you give and pull back, can lead, because this is not a benefit. This is a right. You can only pull it back if it is causing undue burden. If it's not causing undue burden, you cannot be able to withhold it because it will be discrimination.
Interesting. And how does one, okay. Mercy, that is a longer question on how to get exempted. Maybe Alan can text that. I'm saying that because I know the procedure is a bit lengthy. So, and we really don't have time. There's somebody is asking, is it true that the retirement age is plus 5 years for people with disabilities, or what was that?
Yes, retirement age from a Kenya perspective, it is if you have a disability, it is you have 5 years addition to the compulsory retirement age. So if your organization retirement age is 50, so if you have disability is 55. If it is 60, then you go to 65. That is correct. That is the law.
Is there an organization that audits disability compliance?
Yes, we do it. Even the council do it. So we have quite a number that does that.
Okay. All right. I think tests can be done. Example, people living with sickle cell disease or epilepsy. Okay, I think that one was answering something. All right, Richard, anything quickly?
I do not have anything, only briefly to say, I can see from a legal perspective, from a sensitization perspective, everything is in place. How can we have the same energy? Just in one word, how did you find yourself with this energy, enthusiasm for these kind of things? Because I can see everything is in place. How can we become you? In other words,
Let's have more conversation. I'm happy. I'm a phone call away to have more conversation. It is a business case for personal disability. I can give you quite many people who have done very well. A good example is Safaricom, if I can be able to use them here. We're talking about 3 million Kenyans who have got disability in this country. So if you have your solutions which are open and accessible to possibility, you actually have 3 million Kenyans who can be able to join. The numbers are big as you move outside. So you can be able to see. So for example, if you want, this is money on the table. So if you want to money on the table is there. If you're an HR person here and you're looking for quick, nice, and grounded staff that will not be exiting tomorrow because a new sheriff has come in town, then you have a pool here that very few employers are actually targeting.
That's true. I think my two final questions. How do we reach out to Alan? Mercy is asking. Maybe you can share the details of your contact details on how people can reach out to you. Then somebody was asking, who pays for the caregiver of the employee when you hire somebody who needs a caregiver?
So it depends. So government has given rates, but these are just stipend of up to 25,000 per month. But then, as an organization, when you bring in that particular caregiver, then it's only nice that you also build in a stipend to it. So it's actually part of the cost to company. So depending on the minimum criteria that you set for that particular caregiver, then you'll be able to pay that salary. I want to give you an example with ourselves. So ourselves, we have a staff who is has got a caregiver. And the caregiver, we have two separate contracts. So we have a contract with the employee and a contract with that particular caregiver that guides. So the terms of reference are how to be able to take care of this particular employee. So that you don't have a situation whereby it is 10 a.m. in the day, the caregiver wants to leave and leave the employee here. So then we have, and that particular caregiver receives pay from the company directly and just as other employees. Yeah. So within the same company structure.
All right. There's somebody who talked about kindly define undue burden.
Undue burden is, let's say, for example, you want to put a ramp and you are on a list building. You don't have a ramp, you don't have elevators, and your cash flow at that particular point cannot be able to sustain you to be able to put the ramp or put an elevator. or buy assistive, buy flexible, adjustable tables. This, when you go that route, it basically means it will hamper on your operations, it will hamper on your cash flow. Then that is undue burden. But before you arrive at that, that's what I was saying, you need also to have a policy. It's called bring your own device. If you cannot be able to do that, do you have a workaround it? If you cannot be able to procure a JAWS software, can this particular employee come with their own JAWS software? If I cannot be able to put a ramp, can I work from home? If all those things is a no, 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 and if we accommodate you is undue burden, then we are at liberty to be able to let you go. From a Kenyan perspective, we have what we call Fair Administrative Act of 2023. Yeah, I'm not sure the year. That says that administrative actions has to be in writing. So you have to write to the employee and tell the employee we cannot be able to proceed with you because of these issues, and you close it at that.
Wow, you ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We would love to continue, but we are really, really pressed for time. And I hear you, and this is a sign that we really need to do this. And at a board member who is a PWD with a guide, how do we pay? Well, that is a consultancy question. I propose that you you really look for Alan and his organization. They should be able to guide you on across these lines. And I promise you, your questions will be answered to the best of their ability. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's already almost 9:30. Allow us to not continue with this conversation at this. We put a pause, and hopefully we can organize another session sometime later and have a different angle to these conversations around people who are able differently and how we can become inclusive. Alan, you guys can give Alan claps and the emojis and the love and the ululations and the celebration, because he has done an amazing job. So you can just share your reactions to this session. A very, 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 very very, very interesting session. And we really, really appreciate and thank you for the love and thank you for everything. So please join us. If you are a follower of Atara Solutions and you'd like to see what other conversations we're having, Paul has shared our WhatsApp group on the chat. Please join us. We are also going to upload this on our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe. And he has shared the YouTube channel link so that you can get to review this recording and get to appreciate the conversation further. And of course, we are hoping that you can join us in Arusha for the Africa HR Summit happening from the 19th to 21st of August, and registration starts on the 18th, and there's a tour on the 22nd down in Arusha. You are all welcome for the Africa HR Summit. Thank you very much, guys, and see you next time, same place, same time, as we discuss yet another interesting topic. Atara Solutions is your trendsetter, and I hope that you pick these conversations to continue in your workplaces. Asanteni sana, and have yourselves a lovely evening. Good night.
Good night, everybody.